Well, welcome into the Late Night Gamecocks show. My name is Matt Anderson, joined by Alex Jones. Alex is the absolute man, and we are so sorry for any technical difficulties that happened earlier. Um, Alex and I are producing this show tonight, so a lot of fun for us. And we are here to talk all about the LSU South Carolina football game that happened this past Saturday. Starting out, Alex, what an environment at University of South Carolina. What a showcase for these teams to both teams, honestly, but especially for South Carolina. I know that I saw videos at 10 p.m. on Friday night with the students out there, 4:30 a.m. on Saturday morning, 20, 30 deep, just getting excited for Gamecock football. What was your take on that, Alex? You're in the Columbia area.
Yeah, it seemed like it was excitement really building up throughout the week, and then Friday night you see all the videos of all the students and everybody camping out, getting ready for game day, and then when you see the clips of game day, it looked like an incredible crowd that was out there, and I think it impressed game day people and nationally impressed people, and it was kind of funny when we got into the stadium and went up into the press box, you can see kind of that game day area, and it was incredible. Some of the just seeing how many people were actually there, and all those people filled into Williams-Brice Stadium and made it a pretty impressive atmosphere on Saturday.
Yeah. I left, I live in Florence. So I left Florence at 7:15 a.m., got to Columbia around 8:30. Coming in, traffic was already backed up like to Yuji. And then it was backed up on Gervais and Rosewood and everywhere. I will tell you this, Alex. Coming into the stadium, it took us an hour and a half, pretty much an hour and a half, maybe an hour. It felt like an hour and a half to get from the north end zone over to the Cockabooses to park. And a lot of that had to do with LSU team buses coming through, college game day, obviously, and people trying to get there because the pre-show and then the actual show. But it has been a long time since I've seen Williams-Brice Stadium buzzing the way it was buzzing on Saturday. And we got in the stadium about, I don't know, like 45 minutes early. I think the game actually kicked off a little bit after 12 o'clock, probably because of game day and all of that.
But I think it was like 12:15 or something. It may have been closer to.
Yeah, so we went in the stadium a little bit, what felt like earlier than normal. But, I mean, I was just amazed at all of the students. I don't know if you noticed it, and maybe I'm blind, but I was at the Old Dominion game. I think they actually moved the band over in the stadium to accommodate all the students that wanted to come to the game. Over 20,000 students submitted ticket requests for the game, which that alone is something awesome. I mean, when I started in South Carolina in 2006, I think there was like, I don't even know if there were 20,000 students. I mean, there were probably more than that, but to have everybody buzzing like that was pretty amazing. I think that, to your point, Alex, Game Day did a phenomenal job of showcasing not just the city of South Carolina or Columbia, South Carolina, but also the state at large. And it gives me appreciation for what those Game Day folks do week after week, because they have to do so much research to get ready for whatever city or town they're in. And for them to showcase South Carolina the way that they did was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you saw it all kind of on game day, just the turnout and, what everybody was kind of saying about, what just the turnout. It's just, I think it caught a lot of people's attention. And, you mentioned the students. I mean, those students, they filled in and they got in that stadium early. Like that student section started to get full like 30 minutes before the game started. So, it was an awesome atmosphere from start to finish on Saturday afternoon.
And then, if you're not a member of the Big Spur, I encourage you to join the BigSpur.com. A lot of fun things are happening at the University of South Carolina right now, especially around the football program. Obviously, Ray Tanner stepping down is a reason to, stay in touch with all of this stuff. But the recruits that were on campus for this game, it just reminds you why Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, and other Ohio State, other schools around the country are able to recruit at the level they are. Because, Alex, were you expecting this type of crowd from a recruit standpoint before game day was announced?
So, I mean, we had a pretty good idea going into it, who was going to be there. There's going to be, and like, some of the bigger names are going to be there. And, as we'll kind of touch on here soon, like, there are a few names that, we or learned about going in that at the beginning of that game that we learned that ended up being there. So, I think just from the list that we already knew about before the game, that we've talked about this 2026 class and especially that wide receiver group. And you had Jordan Gidron there, Ryan Mosley. Well, he's not an in-state guy, but highly ranked receiver, Donovan Murph from Irmo, and then a couple other guys who they've been recruiting for a while. You think Gordon Sellers, Brody Keefe, two guys we saw at camp, and Jude Hall, a guy from Christchurch, who's another guy who could be one to watch. And there's just a ton of names there. And then, as we were sitting there, we found out that a few more guys were in. Jared Smith, the 5-star edge commit from Alabaster, Alabama. Auburn commit was there, and everybody knows about his story. South Carolina's been recruiting him for a while, and then ended up committing to Auburn in the summer. Found out that 4-star defensive tackle Kevin Wynn was in town for the game, and he's a Florida State commit. And then the other one, you had Jared Curtis. The one maybe the more bigger, I guess they're all surprises, but the biggest surprise I think was Jared Curtis, 2026, really talented quarterback who's committed to Georgia, was also in town. So we'll have to see. I think it's a sign, obviously, that those guys came to South Carolina to watch a game, but we'll have to see where this all goes kind of moving forward.
Well, the good thing, and I'm in the stadium pretty much every single home game, and from my seats, I have a decent vantage point of seeing the recruits. And if you don't know, like, just look over to the top of the South Side Stadium and then look down, and where the Gamecocks run out for 2001, that's the recruit section, and it's been there for 15 years. That's where the recruits hang out. And normally you see a lot of recruits kind of leaving, around halftime, maybe beginning of the third quarter. That was not the case this past week at South Carolina. It seemed like the entire recruiting section was full, like up until the final field goal kick that obviously didn't go the Gamecocks' way. And I like to watch, and there were a lot of people waving towels, throwing towels up for the different Gamecock chants, and those things go a long way. We talked about it. Tennessee a couple years ago kind of set the road for how the Gamecocks finished last year in recruiting with 2 5-stars, 10 4-stars. It was just an absolutely ridiculous class. And if you remember the Big Spur, you can go back and look, and Helmut Granahan has done a fantastic job in talking to a lot of these recruits and seeing what their feelings were. And a couple of them, I'm not going to name names, you'll have to go to the Big Spur to find them, but said, look, I think South Carolina was a better team, got some points taken off the board, and those kinds of memories last, especially against a name brand like LSU. And I think that despite the loss, I don't think that it hindered any recruiting efforts for the Gamecocks going forward. What are your thoughts, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes it's not just a game result, affects a recruit one way or the other. But, I think the biggest thing that stood out to these recruits that were in town from, who Hale and others have heard from, is just the atmosphere that was in Williams-Brice Stadium. I think that resonated with a lot of recruits. And, it's something that, they see that atmosphere and maybe they want to keep coming back for games. So I thought, just from a recruiting aspect, it was a huge success for South Carolina. And we'll see kind of moving forward where South Carolina ends up with these guys.
Yeah, I agree. And, moving on to the game, we'll break down this game. It was a game of emotions, I think, for Gamecock fans. Even if you weren't a Gamecock fan, it was a game of emotions. This game started off hot, Alex. Gamecocks up 17-0. I don't know if anybody that was not in the locker room coming into this game kind of felt like the Gamecocks could be up 17-0, but when the game got to that point, the stadium was absolutely electric. And talking about recruits in the building, they definitely saw that. But leading to that, Alex, you had a block punt. You had obviously a touchdown on the first drive. Shane Beamer talked about that in his press game conference. When you block a punt and you score first, and you're leading at halftime, and you're leading going into the fourth quarter, usually the Gamecocks win those battles. But so from 17-0, Alex, kind of take me through your thought process watching this game and covering it.
Yeah, it was incredible. Kind of as you mentioned, I'm not sure many people thought that South Carolina would jump out to a lead like that, and just the way they did it. That first drive South Carolina had, like that was an awesome drive. Like they drove down the field and really were in control of that whole drive. And then it just continued. Then that block punt just kind of set it off. And I know we're going to get into the second half or second quarter stuff. What kind of happened there? But I thought it was a great start for South Carolina. That I guess unfortunately they just weren't able to build on in the long run.
Yeah, and watching the game live, it looked like in the second quarter, maybe around the 10-minute mark, LSU maybe figured some things out. And look, LSU has a lot of talented players. It wasn't like you were playing, I mean, I hate to say it, but Kentucky. Like Kentucky and LSU do not recruit the same level of talent. And when you're playing against a more talented team, sometimes you need the ball to bounce your way. And it really did. I mean, I was watching with my grandfather, and he was saying, like, wow, Matt, it seems like the ball is just bouncing for the Gamecocks the entire time in the first quarter. And it was. And, Steve Spurrier used to say sometimes, God smiles on the Gamecocks. And then, you get to the second quarter. And I haven't had the time to watch this replay back. So everything I'm going to talk about tonight is watching it live in the stadium. But I've seen that a lot of people are frustrated that the Gamecocks seem to go to a three-man front when they were dominating on defense, and stuff kind of changed. Alex, were you able to see that in the press box? Did the defense shift in that manner?
It did kind of look like it. Maybe maybe they played a little bit more three down front on that drive, and I think LSU kind of took advantage of it there. They got some open running lanes, and that was kind of South kind of goes up 17-0. Then LSU kind of immediately gets some momentum back just by going on that drive and really kind of running the ball. But Garrett Nussmeier made some throws throughout that drive, and really, I mean, for the most part, Nussmeier was really good in that game, and he made some incredible throws. But I think that was just a time where LSU started to really get some momentum back.
Yeah, and look, it's very easy to be critical. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. And I'm really glad that, Alex and I are not talking to you this time last night, because there would be a lot of things that were different. When you look back on it, you have to throw different looks at an offense. And sometimes you guess wrong, and that happens. But I don't think it would have been that different for South Carolina if they kept a four-man front versus a three-man front. There's a reason they switched to a three-man front, because the Gamecock coaches saw something. And they might have been trying to, I can only say this, Alex. Sometimes when I'm playing college football, NCAA, whatever, I do a three-man front because I think they're going to try and pass the ball, and I'm trying to get an interception.
Yeah.
I mean, you just put more guys in the backfield, and it backfired on South Carolina. But I will say that Nussmeier, he proved a lot to me in this game for LSU. He made Sunday throws numerous times in this game, and I think he was still 24 of 40 for the game. So it wasn't like he carved up the Gamecocks secondary and defense. He made some really good plays. I mean, in the second quarter, it seemed like they were just running funnel plays where get the defense to go over here and we're going to go over here and have a funnel. And that's just good play calling. And
yeah, there were some times where, there were a couple of throws I can think of that were just right on the money that South kind of really couldn't do anything about, just had good coverage, but Nussmeier and the wide receivers made the throw. And I think going into this game, we kind of knew that there were going to be times in this game where LSU were going to have, the big plays, or we're going to complete passes. Like they have just, I mean, I think we saw what Nussmeier was capable in that Southern Cal game. And you look, like, all right, they got some talented wide receivers. And, the question was just, what's the pass rush going to be able to do in this game against that talented offensive line? And so I think, they kind of adjusted maybe a little bit, and I think maybe probably just weathered the storm early. They knew South Carolina was probably going to punch early and got up 17-0. LSU adjusted and found a way to get the offense going.
And that's why I kind of say the same thing you're saying, Alex. Like, the pass rush was there. I don't know if any Gamecock fan in the world thinks it wasn't there, but it was there. There were numerous times, and we talked about it leading up to the week on, our shows, Inside the Gamecocks, the Daily Show. Like, Nussmeier likes to get out of the pocket and make something happen. And look, sometimes you just got to tip your hat to a kid that has an arm, and he has a good arm. And I mean, there were some times he threw across his body that I just said, well, damn, Like, what are you going to do about that? Um, but I think that the game kind of changed with the fumble from Lenore Sellers that kind of gave LSU life. And then, the following drive, Lenore's runs it 75 yards. And like I said, he's not going to have another negative rushing yard game in his career. And everyone just saw his wheels and how fast he can move. And I've seen Lenore Sellers play in high school, and I've obviously seen him the last 3 games for South Carolina. When he came off the field after that 75-yard touchdown run, it was almost like he was telling the defense, "I gave up 3. I'm sorry, but I got 4." Like, he was as animated as I've ever seen him, and just super pumped up. But then it kind of felt in the stadium and maybe in the press box too, and the media area, Alex, that it was inevitable that LSU was going to put some points on the board.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, okay, can the Gamecocks score enough to withstand that? And they didn't. And in large part because Lenore Sellers goes down at the end of the second quarter, going into halftime. And after that, we can talk about the third quarter, and I think we should, but LSU had the ball what it felt like, 12, 13 minutes of the third quarter,
Yeah.
175 yards of offense to
I mean,
one.
South Carolina only ran 6 plays in the third quarter, I think.
So, I mean, I guess I go to the point where South Carolina was so strong in the first quarter, ridiculously strong. I mean, you can't scheme up or dream up anything better than the first quarter. And then you go into the second quarter, the game starts to shift a little bit, but Gamecocks find a way to continue to score points. Big plays, call it what you want, big plays. And then the third quarter, it was just like something shifted. And I think a lot of that had to do with Lenore Sellers being out of the game. What are your thoughts on that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, anytime you go from your starting quarterback to backup quarterback, you probably just going to lose some momentum just on the fact of that. I think, at that point, LSU kind of sold out more for the run at that point. Once Robbie Ashford came in, they knew had to respect his wheels too, just with Lenore's. But, I think they kind of had a good idea of what was coming, just from the fact that he had a backup quarterback. And, so I just think LSU kind of knew had a good plan of how to defend Robbie Ashford, but I mean, South Carolina still found a way to make some plays. I mean, the Rocket Sanders touchdown, and he's I'm interested to see what your thoughts were on that as well.
Yeah, I think that the Gamecocks did everything they possibly could do in the third quarter and in the fourth quarter as well. I think that it was just so much heart. Like, I've been in locker rooms, I've played numerous sports. Like, at some point, you have to find what's deep down in your gut, and the Gamecocks found that, and they persevered. They went through difficult situations. I mean, goodness gracious, the defense had a fourth down stand on the 1.5 or the half-yard line, and then all of a sudden, Robbie Ashford has to come out and taking your first snaps inside the 1-yard line. That's just not ideal, but he dug deep and he went through that process, and the Gamecocks still had a chance. Even that field goal to make it a 4-point game. I don't know how that field goal went in. It was 42 yards. It looked like God's angels just came down from the sky and carried that the last half yard, because in the stadium it looked like it just sat there in the air for 5 seconds. So I mean, to get to that point is something that I think the Gamecocks have to hang their hat on. I think it's difficult when you don't have your starting quarterback. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. I think the 13 penalties against the Gamecocks did not help the situation. And look, we talk a lot about Shane Beamer's post-game news conference. We talk about what he says on Carolina Calls. Obviously, Alex just listened to what Shane had to say. But 13 penalties, whether the referees made the right call or the wrong call, if you're in a situation to commit 13 penalties, it's 50-50 call. Either they call it or they don't. I've never been a big referees make a difference person, but I will say that in the stadium, it felt like the referees made a difference in the game. Right, wrong, or indifferent. And there was a Georgia fan that was with his wife sitting right in front of me, and he told me, he's like, I've never seen anything like this. So
Yeah.
there are so many controversial plays, Alex. I don't want to. I mean, we can get into anyone you want to.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting seeing just kind of what the national take is on the game too. You see some of the just comments on the officiating, and obviously South Carolina did a lot. There are things too that South Carolina just kind of shot themselves in the foot too in that game too. So it's not all on the referees for the most part, but and you can talk about the two pick sixes that were brought back. I'm interested to see if there's any other comment about those penalties, but the one that was the most just kind of I guess baffling to me was the offensive pass interference one where Robbie Ashford connected with Dale Von Campbell. And I mean, that was a huge play because, and I'm not sure where the offensive pass interference was, to be honest. Just from looking at it different angles, I didn't see anything. But, when that play, Dale Von Campbell gets South Carolina into plus territory. It's a great play, great throw. But, then that happens and you're backed up behind the chains. And I mean, that kind of play, it changed the game a little bit too, because who knows what happens with, that rest of that drive if that flag's not thrown.
Yeah, and you feel bad for a kid like Robbie Ashford who comes in the game and look, he's played at Auburn, he's played at Oregon. Like he has started games. Like people act like he's the redheaded stepchild in the corner. Like he is a 4-star quarterback from the high school ranks, and I promise he can throw a forward pass. He showed that numerous times in the game. But at the same time, when you're throwing forward passes and you complete a 2-point conversion, you complete a pass downfield and you have flags that are thrown, makes it a little bit difficult. And I was actually talking to somebody today that talked about the 2-point conversion. And look, maybe the 2-point conversion doesn't matter. Who knows? I don't know if it actually factors into the end of the game. But from a 2-point conversion, aren't you starting at the 2 or 3 yard line, Alex?
Is it the 3, I believe?
I think it's the 2, or I think it's the 2 yard line. Might be
Okay.
the 3, but either way, like the rule states that a legal receiver downfield, there's only so many yards before like you're in the end zone. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have markers in the end zone to say 1 yard, 2 yards, 3 yards, 4 yards, 5 yards, and end zone's 10 yards. We all know that, but it's a weird call that you don't see very often in a short yardage situation. So I feel bad for Robbie for that happening to him because, and who knows if he actually knew where he was throwing the ball. I think he just threw it to the middle of the field and said, okay. But he completed it to Oscar Attaway and it just didn't work out. The Kyle Kennard stuff, it's very, very difficult. I'm not actually fluent on the horse collar rule. Alex, maybe you know better than me. I mean, I know that watching it on replay, I would be mad if, my son was thrown down that way. Whether it's a football play or not, I'd be upset. But at the same time, like, it's freaking football. Like, if my son's out there playing football, he might get hit. I don't think that had any impact on the interception, in my opinion. I think that Nussmeier was due for an interception or 2 or 3 throughout the game, just the way the Gamecock defense was playing. The last one, the block, I don't know what do they call on the pick 6 by Nicky Memoir. What was the actual call?
Oh, the blindside block, I think.
Yeah, the blindside
Or
block. I
unnecessary
mean,
roughness. Unnecessary roughness. Yeah, I think.
yeah, unnecessary roughness. I'm sorry, but like you're playing football, and if you're gonna be chasing somebody and you're gonna flop like that, like I wouldn't give the call. But at the same time, I don't know what the referees, what their agenda. I'm not saying agenda, but what the SEC's agenda is. Like they get graded, and if they
Yeah.
don't call that, then that's an issue for them personally. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
and just on that play, I mean, you can see, in the long run, does Nussmeier get to Emmon Murray? Probably not. I don't think he's going to get to Emmon Murray on that play. But I was really just kind of I was interested to see that flag. Just I don't know if that warranted a flag or not. And maybe there's a certain letter of the law or whatever that says that this should be a flag. But I'm interested to see just if there's any other talk about that flag and the others in this game.
Yeah, I thought that Brian Kelly was a little bit audacious in his post-game press conference, mentioning that the Gamecocks block punt might have been an illegal formation or something illegal. Like, come on, dude. Like, you seem to get all the benefit of the doubt the entire game. And look, if you need to stand on something, stand on it. Like, I get
Yeah.
it. Like, look over here, not over here. Like, let me throw some stones. But thought that was pretty funny. I mean, at the end of the day, Alex, I think the Gamecocks did enough to win the game, just what they could do. And especially the situation. I don't think that there was a single person listening to this show or watching this show right now that says, oh man, Lenore Sellers is going to play the second half. The Gamecocks definitely win. I think that everyone kind of had a pit in their stomach that said, okay, what's going to happen next? And for the Gamecocks to not only take back the lead, but get a 4-point lead in that game, I'm more optimistic about the Gamecocks' chances the rest of the season after this game than I would have been if situations were different.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that probably gives South Carolina fans hope from what they saw in this game is, I mean, one, as you mentioned, they played well enough to win, and just some things that didn't go their way. But one of the bigger things you have to win football games is a strong defensive line. And I thought for the most part, you're going up against one of the better offensive lines in the country, and I think we knew that they may not get the sack numbers that they had in previous weeks, but I thought the defensive line pressured Nussmeier and played pretty well for the most part. And with him, the key now with that, I think there were some times where he had time in the pocket to get to wide receivers, but that's just because the offensive line blocked well a lot of times too. And so I think that gives South Carolina fans hope that even with a strong offensive line, they're still able to get to. I think they had 2 sacks, and which are the first 2 LSU's getting up all season. So I think that should give some South Carolina fans hope that going forward, that defensive line is. I mean, it's legit. I think it's time to say that even more. Like they're legit, and they're going to cause some havoc, and it's not going to be in a lot of games too where the quarterback is going to have a lot of time to throw.
I think that's one of the keys right now, Alex, is just the fact that Gamecocks could have scored 50 points in this game. And I don't say that like the offense was over the top crazy, but they had 2 pick sixes that if you just clean up the penalties, you're looking at 33 plus 14. So you're already at 47, and then you have opportunities later in the game to score some more points. So I'm really optimistic about the Gamecocks' chances.
I think it probably should be noted too. The offense in week 3 again showed, they showed improvement again. Like they're running lanes. I think for LSU's defensive line isn't great, and they had some issues in the run game too. But I think the offense continued to show improvement in this game, and they're going to need to keep that up. And I thought that was another step forward too.
Yeah. For those of you that just saw me move, I'm trying to fix this screen. It's just like blurring in my face. It's hard to concentrate. But yeah, so I mean, at the end of the game, Alex, I'd love to get your take on the way that the last minute and 43 seconds, whatever it was, played out. Gamecocks obviously got some momentum. I don't think that anyone in the stadium thought they were going to get into a 48-yard field goal attempt.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. And that's a credit to Robbie Ashford too on that drive. I thought, for the most part, Robbie Ashford showed a lot in that game too. He made some plays, and he did really well in that drive. That throw to, I think it was Dre Jacobs. That throw to Dre Jacobs was pretty big. Like he stepped up in the pocket and found him, and then had the nice run to get him into that field goal range. And I know there's a lot of takes on how the end of game management went down, and I think with hindsight being 2020, I think. You can look at it either way. Like I understand Shane Beamer's comments at the end of the game or after the game as to why they chose to just go ahead and get the field goal. I think you could look at it from both ways, but I understood where he was coming from on that.
Yeah, I mean, I go back to I think it was Mazio and Alex. I mentioned this to you earlier, and I haven't watched the game yet. I will watch it when I get time, but it's been a busy day. I do go back to like I think it was the first down throw once the Gamecocks got to like the 35-yard line. I think it was Mazio crossing, but I'm not 100% sure. And I'm not sure if the ball was off target, at his feet, in his chest, wherever. But I will say that particular play, if that pass is completed, he might have scored. And at bare minimum, gotten to like the 10, 15-yard line, maybe more. So, like, I go back to the coaches saying, like, well, that was a hell of a good call. whatever you decided to do and what Ashford decided to make that pass. And he was under extreme pressure. LSU was coming at him with everybody. I
Yeah.
mean, that could have been the end of the game there. And so then you go and you have, and I can say this, Alex, you can't say it, but you have the second down play where it's a halfback draw to Rocket Sanders, who's been torching them the entire day for 138 yards. LSU's playing don't give up a touchdown, and you might have gotten 8, 10, 15, even 5 yards. That's fine. That's fine. It gives your kicker an extra 5 yards. And then you get down, I think it was 9 seconds on third down. I'm just going off memory here. 9 seconds on third down, and the average play takes 6 seconds. So you got to be 100% confident that if you're going to pass the ball in that situation, which you have to do with 0 timeouts, that your quarterback's going to make a quick enough read to throw it out of bounds, throw it deep, or not put the ball in bounds where a guy can get tackled and the game runs out. So I understand what Shane and Dow were probably thinking. Now, a 48-yard field goal attempt with the wind blowing in, and I was sitting right by that area, and I watched the wind and the flags going that way, and I saw the 42-yarder barely make it through the uprights. I don't know if that was ideal, but that was the situation you were in. It's not like you can call a timeout, flip the field, and say, hey, we want to kick that way. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Like, it's just the situation you're in. And, I don't know if I would have changed many things. But, I'm sure Shane wishes he had attempted to throw a Hail Mary into the end zone to win the game. Like, who wouldn't?
Right.
But I also will tell you right now, Alex, I don't think that the Gamecocks were going to win that game in overtime the way they were calling plays unless they forced a turnover. So playing for overtime in 1 minute and 45 seconds, like, I don't get paid enough to figure that stuff out. And I can sit here in my office with, a backwards hat on and say whatever I want to say. Which is not the situation that the coaching staff is in.
Yeah, it's you can look at it from so many different ways with how it was handled, and it's a pretty easy comment, but like if Herrera makes a field goal, we're not having this conversation right here, probably just because they tied the game and go to overtime. But you kind of mentioned that run with Rocket Sanders. Yeah, I think they probably thought they'd get some more on that, obviously, and put him in better field goal position. But as you mentioned, with Blake Baker's defenses, they love to blitz, and you have to imagine they would know that if there was 9 seconds left or whatever, that there is a passing down, they're going to bring the house, and you're going to have to get the football out. And I think they maybe were just a little bit worried that a sack would happen or a tackle for loss or something, and it would knock them even farther out of field goal range.
Yeah, and look, this game, I think the best thing for Gamecock fans and Gamecock players, Gamecock coaches, is flush it. Like, it happened, it's over. And look, I was talking to somebody that a lot of you guys know the name of, and he made the statement to me like, look, Gamecock fans are going to be depressed after this. They're going to be dejected, and like the Akron game, no one's going to show up. There's going to be like 60,000 people in the stadium. They're all going to leave by halftime. But he said, if you look into the upstate, this doesn't happen. They stand behind their team, and that's why there's a different culture. And just going to go ahead and say it, like, if you are going to bail on the Gamecocks after this, I think it's a mistake. And look, Akron should be a big game. If Lenoris doesn't play, we'll talk about this later in the week. But this is a moment where it's a rally the fans moment. And I'm not a big proponent, Alex, of clapping for a loss. But if you're pissed off right now and the team's pissed off right now, go take out your vengeance on Akron like the team in the upstate did against Appalachian State. You go out there and send a message, and then you have Ole Miss after a bye week, and that should be an electric environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think just to that point, with the Akron game coming up, you can't in college football these days. You can't take anything for certain. Like you look at Northern Illinois beating Notre Dame after Notre Dame beat Texas A&M and College Station in week 1. You just can't take anybody for granted, and I don't expect South Carolina to do that. You think of it's a very old team, and when you listen to the players after the press conference, Debo Williams and Nick Emmanwori especially, they're like, we're going to bounce back, and we're going to we know we got to get better and all that type of stuff. So I don't expect them to come out slow, and we'll see what happens with the injuries and the quarterback situation. But I think Carolina opened maybe as like a 27-point favorite or so today over Akron, and so interested to see how the game's handled just from an injury situation, because you got a bye week coming up, but that's stuff we can get into on Tuesday when we have some more information.
Yeah, and we'll get into this on Tuesday. Like, this is the best thing. Like, whether you love us or you hate us, you get us multiple times a week now. So anything that we have said tonight that you disagree with, let us know. But look, I don't think that Gamecocks have anything to hang their hat on for the loss. I think that you play to win the game, but I also will say in the same breath that brutal game for fans. Absolutely brutal game for fans, brutal game for the players. But, fans didn't commit 13 penalties.
Right.
So remember that. Have a good week. Go get ready, go to Akron, just try and flush it. I think the Gamecocks are still a very, very good football team.
Yeah, even when you think about that game, like, South Carolina competed throughout. I mean, they just let it one slip through their fingers, and they had it. And LSU's a good team in Europe, 17-0 on them. And so, South Carolina, they, even though in the loss they lost, but I think they showed a little bit in that game that what their potential could be this season. Just again, you got a really talented defensive line with and going up with an offense that seems to keep improving each week. So it's going to be interesting to see, just how this team keeps building. And, I think it's going to be, I think the crowd will be great again for Akron, first night game of the year. So it should be a good game for South Carolina to, work itself back out on the field.
Absolutely. So we appreciate everybody for joining us tonight, whether you joined us live on YouTube, you're hearing this in podcast form, you're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the social media stuff. I know that it's a difficult time on a Sunday night after a loss like that, but when you hang out with us, you give us the most valuable thing you have, which is your time, and that is something that we can never say thank you enough for. We will be back Tuesday night, 8 p.m., late night Gamecock show. Alex Jones and myself. As always, you can find both of us on thebigspur.com. If you're not a member, go ahead and check that out. But until Tuesday, we hope you have a great start of your week, and we will get into everything after the dust continues to settle on Tuesday. Thank you all so much, and have a great evening.